When an alien whispered, "Want to see more?" Then unclasp it. I had no idea that one choice would decide the fate of 7 billion people. The phone rang at 3 in the morning. Doctor. Rachel Kim had been asleep for maybe 2 hours, dreaming about something ordinary like grocery shopping. Now she was wide awake, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment, listening to her supervisor's panicked voice on the other end. "Get to the UN compound. Now. Don't ask questions. Just come." Rachel worked as a language specialist for the United Nations. Her job usually involved translating documents and helping diplomats communicate across language barriers. Boring stuff, mostly. She'd never gotten an emergency call before, let alone in the middle of the night. She threw on clothes and called a taxi. The streets of Geneva were empty and dark. The driver kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, probably wondering what kind of trouble she was in. Rachel wondered the same thing. When she arrived at the compound, everything looked wrong. There were military vehicles everywhere. Soldiers with rifles standing at every corner. Helicopters circling overhead. The taxi driver's eyes went wide, and he practically pushed her out of the car before speeding away. A security officer escorted her through 3 checkpoints. Nobody would tell her anything. They just kept scanning her ID badge and waving her through. Her heart was pounding so hard, she could feel it in her throat. Finally, they brought her to a conference room deep inside the main building. There were maybe 20 people there, all looking as confused and terrified as she felt. Government officials, scientists, military personnel, and 3 other language specialists she recognized from her department. The director of the UN walked in, and everyone went silent. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking. Rachel had never seen him look anything less than perfectly composed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "At approximately 11 p.m. last night, we made first contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence." The room erupted. People were shouting questions. Some were crying. One person fainted. Rachel just sat there, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of drill or mistake or elaborate prank, but it wasn't. The director explained that 3 doorways had appeared out of nowhere in 3 cities: Geneva, New York, and Beijing. Not spaceships, not flying saucers, just doorways, hovering in the air, made of some kind of shimmering light that hurt to look at for too long. And through those doorways had stepped beings that called themselves the Valorum. They wanted to talk. They wanted diplomats. And for some reason, they'd specifically requested language specialists to be present. Rachel's supervisor pulled her aside. "They're assigning each of us to work with different members of their delegation. You're going to be working with their lead diplomat. The one in charge." "Why me?" Rachel's voice came out as a whisper. "I don't know. They asked for you by name. We didn't even know they knew your name." That should have been her first clue that something strange was happening, that this wasn't just about translation. But she was too overwhelmed to think clearly. They led her to another room, this one with walls made of some kind of transparent material she'd never seen before. And inside, waiting for her, was Ambassador Thorex. Rachel had expected something like the aliens from movies. Little gray beings with big eyes. Or maybe something with tentacles. What she saw instead made her brain hurt. Thorex looked like light and liquid and smoke all mixed together. Their form kept shifting and changing, never settling into one shape. Colors that Rachel didn't have names for rippled across their surface. It was beautiful and terrifying and completely impossible to focus on, except for one thing. Right in the center of all that chaos, there was a clasp. A piece of jewelry. Maybe. Or some kind of device. It looked almost ancient, made of metal that gleamed like gold but probably wasn't. It was the only solid, unchanging part of the Rex's entire body. A voice filled the room, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Dr. Rachel Kim, your presence is appreciated." The translator device they'd given her wasn't working. The voice was speaking English directly, with no accent, no hesitation. Perfect English. As if the Rex had been speaking it their whole life. "How do you know my name?" Rachel managed to ask. We know many things about your species. We have been observing for some time. You, specifically, are of interest. That wasn't comforting at all. The Rex began to explain why they'd come. They represented something called the Consortium, a collection of civilizations from across multiple dimensions, not just space, but dimensions of reality that humans didn't even know existed. They'd come to Earth to determine if humanity was ready to join them. Ready. That word stuck in Rachel's mind. It implied that humanity might not be ready. And what happened to species that weren't ready? As the first meeting ended, the Rex moved closer to Rachel. The other officials and scientists had already left the room, but Rachel found herself frozen in place. You perceive more than the others, the Rex said, their voice dropping to something almost intimate. This is noted. This is important. I don't understand what you mean. You will. In time, you will understand everything. Rachel walked out of that room feeling like her entire world had been turned upside down. Nothing would ever be the same again. She didn't know yet just how right she was. The next few weeks were the strangest of Rachel's life. Every day, she went to the UN compound and spent hours with Ambassador Therex. They talked about everything from human history to the nature of consciousness. The Rex asked endless questions about how humans perceived time, space, and reality itself. The other language specialists worked with different Valorum diplomats, but Rachel quickly realized her situation was unique. The Rex requested private sessions with her, one-on-one meetings, sometimes lasting 6 or 7 hours. The government officials didn't like it, but they were desperate for any advantage in the negotiations. If the Rex wanted to talk to Rachel specifically, they'd allow it. Rachel's colleagues started looking at her strangely. Some seemed jealous. Others seemed worried. One of them pulled her aside in the cafeteria and whispered, "Be careful. We don't know what they really want." But Rachel was starting to understand what the Rex wanted, at least partially. The alien diplomat was teaching her about Valorum society, bit by bit, revealing things that probably weren't supposed to be shared yet. The Valorum didn't experience reality the way humans did. They existed partially outside of normal time and space, perceiving multiple dimensions simultaneously. What looked like one Valorum was actually that being existing across several layers of reality at once, all compressed down into a form that humans could barely comprehend. That's what the clasp is for, Therex explained during one session. It's a dimensional anchor. It keeps my form stable in your reality. Without it, I would be too much for human minds to process safely. Rachel found herself staring at the clasp more and more often. It was the only thing about the Rex that stayed constant. Everything else shifted and changed. But the clasp remained solid and real. "What would happen if you took it off?" she asked one day. The Rex was silent for a long moment. "You would see my true form. All of me. Existing across multiple states of reality simultaneously. It would be overwhelming. Would it hurt me? It would change you, permanently. You would never see reality the same way again." Rachel should have dropped the subject then. Should have recognized the warning. But she couldn't stop thinking about it. What would it be like to see reality the way the Valorum did, to perceive multiple dimensions at once? She started noticing strange things. Sometimes, when people moved, she'd see a faint echo of their motion, like they'd left a trail behind them. Sometimes she'd hear fragments of conversations a split second before people actually said the words. Sometimes she'd walk into a room and feel emotions hanging in the air like smoke, residue from arguments or celebrations that had happened hours ago. At first, she thought she was just tired, stressed, imagining things. But the experiences kept getting stronger. One evening, after a particularly intense discussion about human consciousness, she confronted Therex about it. "Something's happening to me. I'm seeing things. Feeling things. Is it because of you?" The Rex's form rippled in what Rachel had learned to recognize as agitation. "Yes. Proximity to me has begun to affect your neurology. This was inevitable." "Inevitable? You mean you knew this would happen?" "Yes." Rachel felt anger rising in her chest. "And you didn't warn me? Didn't think I had a right to know that spending time with you would change my brain?" I chose you specifically because your neurology was already predisposed to dimensional perception. Most humans cannot develop it at all, no matter how much exposure they receive. But you are different. Your brain is already trying to process information beyond the normal human spectrum. Rachel sat down hard in one of the chairs. Why me? Why is my brain different? We don't fully understand the mechanism. Some humans are simply born with the potential. Perhaps 1 in every million. You are one of them. The weight of that information settled over her like a heavy blanket. She was different. She'd always felt a little bit different, a little bit apart from everyone else. But she'd thought that was just normal human variation. Now she was being told there was something genuinely unusual about her brain. What happens now? She asked quietly. That depends on you. The changes will continue, whether we proceed or not. But I can offer you a choice. An opportunity to fully awaken your dimensional perception. To see reality as I see it. How? Thorex gestured toward the clasp at the center of their form. Want to see more? Then unclasp it. Remove my dimensional anchor and perceive my true form. If your mind can withstand it, you will gain the ability to consciously perceive multiple dimensions. You will understand the nature of reality in ways no other human has. And if my mind can't withstand it, then you will break. Your consciousness will fragment. You may not recover. Rachel felt cold all over. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was exactly the kind of thing she should refuse immediately. But the strange perceptions she'd been experiencing had shown her something. Reality was bigger than she'd ever imagined. There were layers to existence that most people never glimpsed, and she had the chance to see them clearly, fully, completely. I need to think about this, she said. Of course. But know that time is limited. The consortium will render their judgment on humanity soon. After that, this opportunity may not be available. Rachel left that evening with her head spinning. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. All she could think about was the clasp and what might happen if she removed it. The fear and the temptation pulled at her in equal measure. She didn't know yet that Thorex had reasons for making this offer that went far beyond simple curiosity. She didn't know that humanity's entire future might depend on her decision. She was about to find out. Rachel started digging. If she was going to make a decision this important, she needed more information. She used her security clearance to access classified files about the Velorum and the consortium. What she found made her blood run cold. The consortium's assessment of civilizations wasn't just an evaluation. It was a judgment. Species deemed ready were invited to join, but species deemed unready faced something called dimensional quarantine. They would be isolated, cut off from the rest of the universe in ways Rachel didn't fully understand. The files described it as making a civilization invisible to the rest of reality. They would exist, but completely alone, developing in isolation for thousands of years or more. Earth was failing the assessment. The reports were clear about that. Multiple consortium observers had filed recommendations for quarantine, citing humanity's violence, environmental destruction, and inability to cooperate even within their own species. The vote was scheduled for 3 weeks from now, and the outcome seemed predetermined, except for one dissenting voice, Ambassador Thorex. Thorex had been arguing that humanity deserved a chance. But their argument hinged on one specific claim: that humans possessed latent dimensional awareness, a rare and valuable trait among species in the consortium. If that could be proven, it would demonstrate that humanity had potential beyond their current primitive state. Rachel felt sick as she realized the truth. She wasn't just some random specialist who happened to catch Thorex's attention. She was evidence. Proof of concept. If she could successfully perceive multiple dimensions without losing her mind, she would become the data point that might save humanity from quarantine. And if she failed, if her mind broke under the strain, that would be evidence too. Evidence that humans weren't ready after all. She confronted Thorex the next day, walking into their private meeting room with printouts of the classified files. "You used me," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "This whole time, You've been using me as part of your political argument. I'm not a person to you. I'm a test subject. The Rex's form contracted, pulling inward. Yes and no. The situation is more complex than you understand. Then explain it to me, and don't lie this time. The Rex was silent for a moment, then began to speak. I need proof that humans can develop dimensional perception safely. Without that proof, the consortium will vote for quarantine. Your species will be cut off from the rest of reality for millennia. By the time you emerge, everyone you know will be long dead, and human civilization will have developed in complete isolation. So you picked me because you thought I could survive your experiment. Because I'm expendable enough to risk, but special enough to matter if I succeed. I picked you because you have the highest probability of success. I have scanned hundreds of humans. Your neural structure is uniquely suited to dimensional perception. Yes, this serves my political goals, but I genuinely believe you can withstand this. I would not risk you otherwise. Risk me? You don't get to risk me. I'm not yours to risk. Then what will you do? The Rex's voice was quieter now. Will you refuse and condemn your species to isolation? Will you ignore the potential that exists within your own mind? Or will you take the chance to become something more than human, knowing that your success or failure will determine the fate of billions? Rachel wanted to scream. She wanted to walk out and never come back, but she couldn't. Because the Rex was right about one thing. The stakes were impossibly high. This wasn't just about her anymore. If I do this, she said slowly, it happens on my terms. Not yours. Not the consortium's. Mine. What terms? The experiment is documented and observed by human scientists. Everything that happens to me, every measurement, every brain scan, gets recorded and shared with human researchers. If I survive this, other humans need to be able to develop the same abilities. If I'm going to be evidence, then I'm going to make sure humanity gets something out of it regardless of how the vote goes. The Rex considered this. That is acceptable. The consortium prefers transparency in such matters. When? 7. Give me 3 days to prepare. To say goodbye to the people I care about. Just in case. And to get the scientific team ready. 3 days. Agreed. Rachel spent those 3 days in a blur of activity. She met with neuroscientists and physicists, explaining what was about to happen as best she could. Most of them thought she was insane. A few understood the necessity. All of them agreed to document everything. She called her mother, who lived halfway across the world. They hadn't spoken in months. The conversation was awkward and painful, but Rachel managed to say the things she needed to say without revealing too much about what was coming. She wrote letters to friends, to be delivered if things went wrong. She updated her will. She did all the things people do when they're preparing for the possibility of death, or worse. On the 3rd day, she walked into the laboratory they'd prepared. It was deep underground, in a shielded facility designed to contain whatever might happen. Scientists filled the observation room, their faces pressed against the glass. Cameras pointed at her from every angle. Monitors displayed her vital signs and brain activity in real time. The Rex waited in the center of the room, the clasp gleaming at the core of their shifting form. Are you ready? The Rex asked. Rachel's hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. Every instinct she had screamed at her to run. But she stepped forward anyway. Tell me one more time what I'm going to see. All of me. Every version that exists across probability and time. The me that arrived on Earth, and the me that never came. The me that is trying to save your species, and the me that has already failed. You will see my world, existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously. You will see the consortium. You will see reality as it truly is. Not a single timeline, but an infinite branching web of possibility. And it will change me, permanently. You will never be fully human again. But you will understand. You will see. Rachel reached out, her hand hovering just above the clasp. This was it. The moment everything changed. She took a deep breath. Want to see more? She whispered to herself. echoing Thorex's original words. Then here we go. She grasped the clasp and pulled. The clasp came free in Rachel's hand, and reality exploded. She was seeing Thorex, but not one Thorex. Thousands of them, millions of them, all occupying the same space but existing in different states of reality. There was Thorex, the diplomat, standing calmly before her. There was Thorex, the warrior, covered in scars from battles Rachel couldn't comprehend. There was Thorex as a child, small and frightened. There was Thorex dying, their form fragmenting into light. All of them were real. All of them existed simultaneously, and behind Thorex, she could see their world. Not one world, but countless versions of it, all layered on top of each other like sheets of glass. Cities that rose and fell, and rose again. Oceans that were frozen and liquid and vapor all at once. A sun that burned in colors that didn't exist in Rachel's reality. Then she saw the consortium, vast beings that made Thorex look small and simple by comparison. They existed across so many dimensions that Rachel's mind couldn't count them. They were ancient beyond measure, their thoughts moving through reality like slow-motion lightning. She understood, suddenly, that the consortium didn't just observe the universe. They were part of its fundamental structure, woven into the fabric of existence itself. And then she saw Earth. 7 billion human beings, each one radiating probability streams like branches from a tree. Most of the branches ended in darkness, war, famine, environmental collapse, the extinction of the species. Rachel saw timeline after timeline where humanity destroyed itself, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, over centuries of suffering. But there were other branches. Rare ones, glowing with light. Timelines where humanity learned to cooperate. Where they developed technology without destroying their world. Where they reached out to the stars not with violence but with curiosity and hope. Those timelines were beautiful beyond words. Rachel understood now why the consortium feared humanity. Not because humans were violent or ignorant, because they were powerful in ways they didn't realize. Every human decision split reality into new branches. Every human thought generated new possibilities. Humanity was creating new dimensions of reality just by existing, unconsciously reshaping the multiverse around them. If humans developed dimensional technology without the wisdom to use it properly, they wouldn't just destroy themselves, they would destabilize reality itself, creating cascading collapses that could damage countless other civilizations. The consortium wasn't trying to punish humanity. They were trying to protect everything else from humanity's uncontrolled potential. Rachel tried to hold on to this understanding, tried to keep her mind focused on what she was seeing. But there was too much. The information kept flowing, kept expanding. She wasn't just seeing Thorex and Earth anymore. She was seeing everything. She saw herself, but not just the her that was standing in this laboratory. She saw the Rachel, who had never taken this job. The Rachel, who had died in a car accident 5 years ago. The Rachel who had become an artist instead of a scientist. The Rachel who had said no to the Rex and walked away. All of these versions of herself existed. All of them were real, and she could feel them all as if they were her. Her sense of identity began to fracture. Which Rachel was the real one? Which timeline was prime? The question didn't make sense anymore because they were all equally real. All equally her. She tried to scream but couldn't remember how. Tried to close her eyes but realized she didn't have eyes in the way she'd always understood them. She was dissolving, spreading out across probability like ink in water. From very far away, she heard shouting, human voices, panicked and desperate. She felt hands on her body, pulling her backward. Felt something metal being pressed back into place, the Rex's clasp. Someone had reattached it. Reality snapped back into focus, collapsing from infinite possibilities into a single, solid world. Rachel was on the floor, her body convulsing. Scientists surrounded her, some trying to help, others just staring in horror. Her vitals had gone critical. Her brain activity showed patterns that shouldn't be possible. She was dying, or transforming, or both. Then, gradually, The seizures stopped. Her breathing steadied. Her heart rate normalized. She opened her eyes and saw the laboratory around her, solid and real and singular. But it wasn't really singular. She could still see the echoes, could still perceive the branches of probability extending from every person, every object, every moment. The dimensional perception hadn't gone away when they'd reattached the clasp. It had just become manageable, filtered through her transformed neurology. She sat up slowly. Everyone stepped back, giving her space. She could see their fear, their awe, their confusion. She could see their thoughts as ripples in reality, colors and shapes that corresponded to emotions and intentions. "I'm okay," she said, though her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "I'm still here. I'm still me." But she wasn't, not really. She'd seen too much, understood too much. The Rachel who had entered this room no longer existed. In her place was something new, something that was human but also more than human. Thorex approached slowly, their form stable again with the clasp reattached. "You survived. Against all probability, you survived and remained intact. Do you understand what this means?" Rachel looked at the alien diplomat and saw them clearly for the first time. Not just their surface form, but their intentions, their hopes, their fears. Thorex genuinely cared about humanity's fate. The political calculation was real, but so was their desire to save Earth from quarantine. "I understand a lot of things now," Rachel said, "including some things you probably didn't want me to know." The scientists were already examining the data from her brain scans. She could hear their excited chatter, their disbelief at what the readings showed. Her neurology hadn't just withstood the dimensional perception, it had adapted, created new neural pathways that didn't exist in normal human brains. Pathways that could process multidimensional information and translate it into something her consciousness could use. She'd become a bridge. A translator not between languages, but between dimensions of reality. And then one of the scientists noticed something else. Something that made his face go pale. "Dr. Kim," he said quietly, "you need to see this. The brain scans are showing that your neural changes are generating a field effect. Everyone who's been in close proximity to you since the experiment is showing subtle changes in their own brain activity. It's like you're broadcasting the new neural patterns, and other people's brains are trying to copy them." Rachel felt cold understanding wash over her. If what he was saying was true, if her transformation was contagious, then she'd just become a threat to humanity's normal development. People around her would start to change, whether they wanted to or not. Within years, within a generation, a significant percentage of humanity could develop dimensional perception. Ready or not, prepared or not, they would change. The consortium wouldn't see that as evolution. They'd see it as an uncontrolled outbreak, the exact kind of dangerous development they'd been trying to prevent. Rachel had just made humanity's situation much, much worse. The consortium delegates arrived 3 days later. Not just the Rex this time, but 5 others, representing different civilizations from across the dimensional spectrum. They appeared in the UN Assembly Hall, their forms barely contained by the space. The room felt too small, too fragile, like it might crack under the weight of their presence. Rachel stood before them, knowing that she was the evidence they'd come to examine. The data from her transformation had been shared with them. They knew what she'd become. They knew about the field effect, about the danger she represented. The lead consortium delegate spoke, their voice resonating through multiple dimensions at once. "You have proven that humanity possesses the capacity for dimensional perception. This was unexpected. However, you have also proven that this capacity emerges uncontrolled and spreads without conscious intention. This confirms our initial assessment. Humanity is not ready for consortium membership. The quarantine will proceed as planned." "Wait," Rachel said, her voice steadier than she felt. "There's another option." The delegates turned their attention to her. She could feel the weight of their observation, like being examined under a microscope that looked not just at her body, but at every possible future she might create. "I can teach others to control this ability. If I can develop stable dimensional perception, so can other humans. Give me time to prove it. The field effect is already spreading, another delegate said. You cannot stop it. Within years, thousands of humans will begin to develop dimensional awareness. Most will not have the neural predisposition you possess. Most will not survive the transition intact. Then let me find the ones who can survive it. Let me train them. If I can create even a small group of humans who can safely perceive multiple dimensions, that proves humanity can evolve into this capability responsibly. And if you fail, if your students break under the strain, then you'll have your evidence for quarantine. But right now, you're making a decision based on fear of what might happen. Give us the chance to show you what actually will happen. The delegates conferred among themselves, their communication happening in dimensions Rachel could barely perceive, even with her enhanced senses. Finally, the lead delegate spoke again. This proposal is irregular. However, given the unprecedented nature of this situation, we will allow it. You have one standard cycle, approximately 1 Earth year, to demonstrate controlled development of dimensional perception in other humans. If you succeed, we will reconsider our assessment. If you fail, the quarantine will be enacted immediately, and you will be removed from Earth to prevent further contamination. Rachel felt her chest tighten. 1 year. 1 year to find people who might have the same neural predisposition she had. 1 year to teach them to survive an experience that had nearly destroyed her mind. 1 year to save humanity from isolation. I'll need volunteers, she said. People who understand the risks and choose to take them anyway. That is acceptable. We will observe from a distance. Do not attempt to deceive us. We will know. The delegates vanished, leaving behind only Thorex. The alien diplomat approached Rachel slowly. You have bought your species time, Thorex said. But time is not the same as salvation. What you're proposing is incredibly dangerous. I know, but it's better than the alternative. Is it? Some of your volunteers will not survive this. You will be responsible for their deaths or madness. Can you bear that weight? Rachel thought about the probability streams she'd seen during her transformation. All those timelines where humanity destroyed itself. All those rare, glowing timelines where humanity survived and thrived. The difference between them came down to choices made in moments like this. Hard choices. Impossible choices. I don't know if I can bear it, she said honestly, but I'm going to try. The UN organized a press conference. Rachel stood before cameras broadcasting to the entire world, with Thorex beside her. She explained everything. The consortium, the assessment, the quarantine, her transformation, the deal she'd struck. And then she asked for volunteers. I need people willing to risk their minds and possibly their lives. People who understand that what I'm asking is dangerous beyond measure. You'll need to remove Ambassador Thorex's dimensional anchor and survive perceiving their true form. Most people can't do this. Most people shouldn't even try. But if you have the capacity, if your neurology is predisposed to dimensional perception the way mine was, you might survive. And if enough of us survive, we can prove to the consortium that humanity is ready for this next step in our evolution. She paused, looking directly into the cameras. I won't lie to you. This might kill you. It might break your mind. It might change you so fundamentally that you can never go back to being fully human. But if we don't try, our entire species will be cut off from the rest of reality for thousands of years. Everyone we know, everyone we love, will live and die in isolation, never knowing what else exists beyond our little corner of the universe. Rachel closed her eyes, using her enhanced perception to look at the probability streams branching out from this moment. She saw timelines where no one volunteered, where humanity was quarantined and she was exiled. She saw timelines where dozens volunteered and most of them died, traumatizing humanity and making the quarantine inevitable anyway. She saw timelines where the volunteers succeeded but the consortium quarantined humanity regardless. But she also saw timelines, rare and precious, where everything worked, where humans learned to perceive multiple dimensions safely, where they joined the consortium as equals rather than primitives, where they used their unique capacity for generating probability branches not as a weapon but as a gift, enriching the multiverse rather than destabilizing it. Those timelines were possible. They existed. She could see them. She opened her eyes and continued speaking. I know what I'm asking is terrifying, but I've seen what we could become. I've seen the versions of humanity that survive and grow and reach out to touch the stars. We have that potential in us. We just need the courage to reach for it. She gestured to the Rex's clasp, the small metal object that separated realities. Want to see more? Then here's what it costs. Here's what we have to risk. Here's what we have to sacrifice. And here's what we gain if we succeed. The broadcast ended. Rachel stood in the empty studio, feeling the weight of what she'd just done. Somewhere out there, people were making decisions, weighing risks, calculating odds, choosing whether to step forward or turn away. She wouldn't know for days how many would volunteer. Wouldn't know for months whether any of them would survive the transformation. Wouldn't know for a year whether humanity's gamble had paid off. All she could do was wait and hope and prepare for what came next. 3 days later, the first volunteer arrived at the UN compound. A young woman from India, a physicist who specialized in quantum mechanics. She walked into the facility with fear in her eyes but determination in her stride. I want to see, she said simply, whatever the cost. I want to see what's really there. Rachel looked at her and saw the probability streams branching out from this decision. Some ended in darkness. Some ended in light. All of them ended in change. Okay, Rachel said. Let's begin. She led the volunteer to the laboratory, where the Rex waited with the clasp gleaming at the center of their form. The same clasp Rachel had removed. The same doorway between realities. The cameras were ready. The scientists were watching. The world held its breath. Rachel stood beside the volunteer, ready to guide her through what came next. Ready to catch her if she fell. Ready to bear witness to either triumph or tragedy. Want to see more? Rachel asked gently, repeating the words that had changed her life. The volunteer reached out, her hand trembling, and grasped the clasp. Reality exploded, again, and the future of humanity hung in the balance. Whatever happened next, whatever timeline emerged from this moment, humans would never be the same. They had seen through the doorway. They had touched the infinite. And there was no going back. The transformation had begun. For better or worse, humanity was evolving, and Rachel would guide them through it, one mind at a time, one transformation at a time, until they either proved themselves worthy of the consortium or proved that some species were meant to remain small and isolated in their corner of reality. She hoped, with every fiber of her enhanced being, that it would be the former, that the glowing timelines she'd seen would become real, that humanity would find a way to handle the impossible burden of infinite awareness without losing themselves in the process. Time would tell. Time, and the choices made by ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. Time, and the courage of those willing to risk everything for a chance at something more. The story of humanity's transformation had just begun. And Rachel would see it through to the end, whatever that end might be.